and I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, and everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
It's playoffs. It's not calm. It's so we won't be. We'll rant, we'll rave, and discuss. And welcome to the Ships and Pucks podcast. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Ships and Pucks. Excuse me. Facebook.com Ships and Pucks. YouTube.com Ships and Pucks. Twitch.com Ships and Pucks. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 50. Excuse me, as I'm choking to death. Area 51 Sports Network. As we're live here on a Thursday night, shortly after the world is in turmoil in Toronto, as the Florida Panthers have walked into Toronto and have taken not one, but the first two games of this series, going back home to the fine beaches of Florida with a 2-0 series lead. So we'll get into that. We'll get into the playoffs. And, of course, there's been another significant move in Calgary. We'll get into that a little bit later as well, talking about the change, the coaching change here. But we'll say hello to Sean. Sean, hello. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Kev. I really like your impression of the Boston Bruins there with the
choking. Yes, the choking. Very much.
I thought they were playing playoff charades at first.
Yeah, and to Devin and all those Leafs fans. Wow.
Oh gosh, wow, a little soury there. Dan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you gentlemen doing? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. We're gonna just touch on the second round of the playoffs and the playoffs overall here. As we saw one of the biggest upsets. I think. Well, I guess we need to start there. One of the biggest upsets in NHL history, the Florida Panthers down 3-1 to the Boston Bruins in the series, came back and forced a Game 7, down 3-2 with under a minute to go in Game 7, tied it, and then won it in overtime, and have taken that momentum into Toronto to win the first two games of that series. And I've posted this on Twitter. The Florida Panthers remind me very much of the 1994 Vancouver Canucks. They have a guy that is driving play in Matthew Tkachuk, very similar to how Pavel Bure drove play in Florida, in different ways, but still driving play. You've got a shifty center in Sam Bennett, a la Cliff Ronning. You've got
Bennett shifty?
He can be a little shifty there. Carter Verhaeghe. Or shitty, if depending on how you feel about the Matthew Nyes hit. Anyway, but you've got just all of this. You got Sergei Bobrovsky playing like Kirk McLean. You've got Brandon Montour kind of playing like Jeff Brown. I picked Florida to win this series. Sorry, Devin. But I guess maybe let's go from the first round. What is the bigger upset, in your opinion? The Florida defeat of Boston in 7, or Columbus's sweep of Tampa Bay, which both were done by both goaltenders were the same. It was Sergei Bobrovsky.
I think it's Columbus over Tampa. Tampa was Columbus just was a team that wasn't good up until then, right? They had their They made some moves at that deadline, but leading up into them, they were still very much a middling team. A lot of this Florida team was the President's Trophy champions from last year. So I think when you look at that, even though the point differential between the Bruins and Panthers was larger than the point differential between the Lightning and Columbus, I think when you look at that, I think it's I think the bigger upset was Columbus over Tampa, especially the way they did it.
I'll just point out it wasn't just that Columbus team that wasn't good. Columbus is still not a good team.
Exactly.
It's not like that was the anomaly year.
Yeah.
Well, they went in all in. They went in all in that year. They got Matt Duchene. They made a whole bunch of other trades because they knew they were losing both Bobrovsky and Panarin.
They did, yeah.
Yeah. Dan, where are you on that?
I mean, to me, it's tough to tell what the bigger upset is until we see how this all plays out. Because if, the team that has the upset is out the next round, to me, is it really that much of an upset? But I would say right now, yeah, I'd agree with Sean about Columbus. That really wasn't a great Columbus team. This Florida team was a team that was expected to be good this year. And I would say probably didn't look as good in the regular season as they should have, especially after bringing in a guy like Chuck. So I was expecting more from this Florida team this year than we got. And I think we're seeing that now from them.
Yeah, I would agree the Columbus one is more of an upset. Florida just, I think with Boston, I don't they got off to this roll. Everything just seems so right with them. They Florida came in fighting for their playoff lives. Like Matthew Tkachuk was on an incredible pace at the end of the year and they had Alex Lyon. Have you heard of him play goal? They had to fight, scratch, and claw their way to get into the playoffs, and they were actually a good chunk behind. People forget as well before they got in, so they were in playoff mode. Where Boston was coasting all this way, and there was, you get the injury to Patrice Bergeron late at the end of the last game of the year. And you don't have him, and you still found your way to a 3-1 series lead. But ultimately, just Florida just had more fight in them than Boston did.
I think it goes back to saying what I know we've said for a while, which is teams going into the playoffs for momentum is so important.
Yeah.
Boston also was fighting the flu off
Yes.
during the beginning of that series as well.
Yeah, but you still got a 3-1 lead. So, I don't know. I know that there's not a lot of love for Boston, but there's certainly just that heartbreaking image at the end of watching Patrice Bergeron, which is likely that was the end of his career. I think that's for him. That was so unfortunate. I think everyone will laugh at the Bruins because, people hate the Bruins, and it's completely understandable why in a lot of ways, but they're going to have a very interesting offseason in terms of how what they do going forward, because that was kind of
their last dance season. They brought back Krejci. They had Bergeron on his last legs, at least up front. So the blue line still looks really good. They've got a good goaltending tandem. If they can find essentially if they can find 2 top 6 centers, they have a chance to roll it back. But those are 2 big holes to fill, because I don't think Krejci's coming back. Don't think Bergeron's coming back. Charlie Coyle has proven that he's better suited as a number 3 center. So
yeah. It'll be very interesting in that sense. And then of course Toronto finally got that monkey off their back. They beat Tampa in overtime. Just with Tampa, it just felt like this was a team and an organization that's just been running out of gas, on fumes and out of gas. I mean, Victor Hedman played hurt. Probably others we don't know played hurt, and they found their way to get there. But to me, this was my thought process. Florida is a tougher matchup for Toronto than Boston would have been, because just everywhere that I see Toronto having a strength. I just see Florida matching it. You got Matthews, you got Barkov, you've got Mitch Marner, you've got Matthew Tkachuk, you got William Nylander, Carter Verhaeghe. Like I mean, I know Nylander's a 40-goal scorer, but there's just somewhere in this lineup Florida has an answer for, and their bottom six is outplaying the Leafs' bottom six right now. And I've been generally mostly impressed with Florida, and I feel like Toronto's kind of they got that first round. They got out of that first round. They got that monkey off their back, and I think they kind of took a deep breath. And Florida's like, I don't care, we're coming after you.
Yeah, Florida's playing with no pressure on them. They're still the underdogs, and they're playing loose. While the Leafs are playing tight, and you can tell why. That's why they're giving up. At least tonight, they gave up a couple goals in quick succession to start the second period. That was the game.
When I was watching that game, I thought that to me, the Panthers look like the team that is more comfortable with high pressure playoff hockey. Like the Leafs, to me, still don't look like a team that's used to this second round of action.
Well, I think part of it is when they're playing the Lightning, they're two-time Stanley Cup winners and been to the final 3 times, but their number one defenseman was playing hurt.
Yeah,
and as good as Sergachev has played this season, when you got players having to play up like that, especially on defense, and then Tampa was also without Eric Chernak. They were out basically with a hobbled Hedman and without Chernak, 2 key top 4 defensemen for the Lightning, and the Leafs were able to wear them down. With the Panthers, they're a team that bullies.
Yeah,
they don't back down. They were that last year before they even had Matthew Tkachuk, and then you add him. It's going to be tough. It's going to, especially now that they're down 2-0. They're gonna. I remember we sort of chuckling at the fact. Remember when we talked about how back during it's like, okay, what happens with Dubas? Yeah, if they make it through the first round and it's a sweep in the second round, is that really a progress? I don't think it's going to be a sweep. I think they're going to find a way to at least get one out of these next 2, but they need to find another gear. And I think sometimes you have to learn how to walk, crawl to walk, and walk to run. And they still have to find that next gear, that set, because every playoff, every round, you have to find another gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a sweep, but if it's not, I think Dubas sticks around because the second round is a huge success for that organization.
You know what we're missing though? We need a Dubas cam. I mean, we're panning to him anyway. Why don't we just put a camera on Kyle Dubas and just watch the game from his view? What would be wrong with that?
Why do you want that?
Well, because we get a Dubas shot like every 5 minutes on the broadcast. So I figure, why not?
You know that's just the television side of things. They find something to hyperfixate on during a series, whether it's a saying or someone in the stands or a GM or a coach, and it's almost every second whistle.
Yeah, it's been pretty.
Do you want picture in picture? Because we had his nose in the bottom corner.
Sure, that'd be hilarious.
Because we had the Matthew Tkachuk cutaways during the bubble playoffs.
Yeah.
Yep.
And honestly, if Dubas was in any other market, you wouldn't see him. Like, look at how often they show the Flames or the Canucks GMs, right? It's because it's Toronto.
Yeah,
I think in the playoffs you would see it, especially like.
But I'm not seeing it that much. I'm not seeing it that much in New Jersey or in Vegas or Edmonton. Like none of the other.
Yeah, we're not looking at Ken Holland's face.
But I think it comes with the story of it all too, right? Where like Dubas does not have a contract next year. So I think to me it makes sense to do it, even though it is a fixation that we've seen in the past, whether it is a commentator saying 18-year-old Sam Bennett at nonstop, or Eddie Lack's dad, or it always happens.
You're saying we weren't lacking for Mr. Lack?
Nope.
No. Yeah, but it's going to be interesting. I'm still going to stick with Florida. I believe that they're going to win the series, and I'm more confident with that now, 2-0. Although the New Jersey Devils were down 2-0 to the New York Rangers, they found a way to get back to win that series. And did they make the Rangers look old and slow? Holy smokes. There was a few people I saw that called the Devils frauds. That's no fraudulent team. But the Rangers, pardon my punning here, but they played like Schmid. And get it? Schmid, are you there? Is this thing on? Hello? Anyway.
I don't have my rim shot sound effect, but
yeah.
nor my booing sound effect.
The Devils, Devils, Hurricanes. I did pick the Devils. I'm afraid I may regret that because the Carolina Hurricanes I'm surprised the Hurricanes are playing so well with all of these injuries, but they are so deep. Like Seth Jarvis all of a sudden comes out of his own, and
I think the Devils are done after this one.
I'm still going to stick with the Devils to win this series. I still think the Hurricanes' health is going to...
I still don't feel the Devils are built like a playoff team. They kind of seem like that rebuilding team that somehow snuck in. And yeah, they made the Rangers not look good, but the Hurricanes are a great team this year. And like you said, Kev, they have depth issues, but they're still winning. And I think it's going to be tough for the Devils to get through them.
Yeah, I love the Hurricanes blue line. I think it's probably one of the best in the league. And then you've got a solid goaltending tandem. It'll come down if they can score enough, and right now they have. And that's the biggest thing that New Jersey has in their pocket, is that the ability to score, led by Jack Hughes. You've got Selke nominee Nico Hischier there as well. So I think I think that's going to be a great series. We've watched one game and let's see how the Devils adjust before really thinking if they're done.
Yeah. And then the team I think everyone completely underestimated, and I'm wearing their hat today, the Seattle Kraken.
They're a division rival. I hate them. Fuck them.
Well, you may hate them. You may want to fuck them or whatever, but they have been the most underestimated team of these playoffs. There were people picking Colorado to sweep. Boy, were they wrong. There were people picking Dallas to sweep them. Boy, are they wrong again. This team is deep. This team has depth, and this team has playoff experience. And they had the most 5-on-5 of the playoff teams, the most 5-on-5 goals, including the playoffs. That's the Seattle Kraken, one of the best road. They're so comfortable playing on the road. I'm not stuttering. They're beating Dallas. They're going to the conference finals. I'm telling you this right now. They are.
I'm telling you that you're wrong.
I'll bet you. I'll bet you Dan's $5 that you were wrong. The Kraken are beating Dallas.
What if I don't even have $5 to my name?
Well, you'll get it from Matt.
Okay.
You're not even willing to bet your own money.
I just moved. No.
I don't think there's been a team since the Florida Panthers we talked about earlier who've expanded in the league and made it to the Stanley Cup faster, or the playoffs faster if they do go to the third round. Like,
you mean
Vegas?
Have you forgotten Vegas?
Well, okay, Vegas. Yeah, I guess I'm thinking before this, like this last round of expansions. Because yeah, like Vegas, Seattle both did, but then even before that, right? We were always kind of expanding in twos, and there was never, I don't think, a more successful pair of expansion teams. But as we talked about before the show, I mean, these guys paid a lot for these teams. They're going to be good quickly. Kevin, I don't think that Seattle makes it past Dallas. Dallas is a playoff team. They're built as a playoff team. They're a seasoned playoff team. I think Seattle, good for them for making it to round 2. But I think this is the end of the line.
I
We
disagree.
saw Ottinger lay an egg in game 1 there. We know he's a top end goaltender. We know that he has the ability to steal a series. If he's on his game, Dallas wins it.
I think Seattle's the deeper team. I
Don't
just-
care.
We're about to find
Don't
out.
care.
I know you don't
Goaltending.
care. It's I
Goaltending.
grew up. The one guy that has been severely underestimated has been Mr. Grubauer, who is
He was
Like-
shitting. He was shitting the regular season.
I think if
he was
Seattle's as
shit
good as you
last year.
say,
He was shit
if Seattle's
last
as
year.
good as
He
you
wasn't
say,
shit this
Kevin,
year.
I don't think it would have taken 7 games against Colorado.
They have Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, and they're still Colorado's a pretty deep team. I think with Colorado, that Nikushkin's distraction, and I'm very hesitant to get into whatever happened there because it sounds like a very serious situation. But I think that had a huge impact. I wouldn't be surprised if there's other. I don't think Cale Makar was playing at 100% either.
Who
And
is
then
this
you
time of year?
nobody, but I don't. Okay, maybe okay. I think Cale Makar was more injured than they realized. In Colorado, just their depth players, just like they had to rely so much on McKinnon and Rantanen and Makar and Taves. There was no one else that really took a step up for them in this playoff, and with Seattle, they did. It's
Well, we
just
lost Dan.
oh, Dan. He's
He'll be
going to
back.
get he's going to get the $5, I guess.
There we
Yeah,
go.
it's unfortunate. Like
I just look at Dallas and they've got Heiskanen leading that blue line. They've got arguably the best line in hockey. They've got Ottinger in net. I think over a 7-game series, I think they find a way to get past this Seattle team who has overachieved.
I agree with Sean.
we'll see.
I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be an easy series, but I think when it
No.
comes down to it, Dallas is the team that will be able to take those overtime wins or those clutch wins. I think Seattle's overachieving.
We'll see. And the Oilers in Vegas. I did have a buddy at work that said that who was an Oilers fan. His words were he felt that the Kings were the toughest team that the Oilers were going to face in the Western Conference, and he
2023 Kings?
yes, this 2023 King team was
Oh.
going to be the toughest. I think he completely has severely underestimated how damn structured this Vegas team is. And I know it was a 5-4 game. Like, I know that there's probably a lot of things that Vegas would like back, but I like that last 10 minutes, Vegas completely shut the Oilers down. And not a lot of talk about this from that Oilers broadcast, but Jack Eichel strips the puck from Connor McDavid and scores. I thought Jack Eichel had a really strong game. To me,
Would you give Tanev up for him?
still no.
Sorry, had to.
Still no.
Brandon Tanev, yes.
What about would you give up Dylan Dubé and Yusuf Alamaki for Mark Stone?
Well, now you would. Well,
You'd have to it would depend what the reacquisition cost for Valimaki is.
Well, that back injury for Mark Stone is something though too. But this Vegas team looks really good, and they're deeper than the Oilers. And I mean, I think Leon Draisaitl is playing the best hockey in the world right now. There's no question about it. But I don't. The Oilers don't match up well in a 7-game series with Vegas. I don't see the Oilers beating Vegas.
No, as a Flames fan, I don't want them to either. But no, I agree with you. I think that Vegas is, I don't want to say taking the Oilers to cleaners, but I think Vegas is going to show that there's a very different skill level between these two teams.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's necessarily skill level, but I think they just have. I like the blue line a little bit better. If Brossoit can hold his own in net, they're good. And then I think with Eichel, they've got enough of the top end skill to match up at least decently with the top end skill.
And sort of like I was saying with Dallas, and even with Florida, I think that there's a team that knows what it takes to win in the playoffs, which Edmonton hasn't had as much success with. And they feel like they're built for that.
Yeah, and the goaltending,
Goaltending, I think, is iffy on both sides.
Yeah, it's true. But I think the one thing I would say though is if Vegas has a stumble, they go to Jonathan Quick. If the Oilers have a stumble, I have no confidence. I don't have confidence in Jack Campbell. Although I
think it's the same. It's really much the same because Jonathan Quick has not been this season. At least when he was with the Kings, wasn't a good enough goalie for them. So I think it's you got that extra day again for the Oilers, and
I think there is something to be said though, Sean, about the playoff experience that Quick brings over Campbell.
I mean, yeah, that is fair.
Do we know if Mike Smith has passed a physical? Could that be their backup in Edmonton?
No, I do think
because Smitty usually goes into beast mode in the playoffs.
He does. Yeah, I think the way I look at it is I think it's going to be a long series. It's going to be a battle, but I do think that Vegas has the ability to beat the Oilers, even though I think the Oilers are going to squeak it out.
Really?
Yep. But the idea that the Kings are the toughest opponent for the Oilers in the West, I think is laughable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see that, but we'll see what happens. I think we're in for some fascinating storylines in the second round anyway. And let's transition to one of the fascinating offseason storylines already this offseason. And it's the Calgary Flames, of course. It started 3 Mondays ago when Brad Treliving said and the Flames mutually agreed to part ways. Then the event center agreement was put in place, which, I mean, really we'll have to wait until May 20th. When's the election?
29th,
somewhere in there, when that election is, to see if this goes through.
A little bit after that, Kev, because just because if the NDP win doesn't mean that that deal's done.
And I would also say the story started a little bit even further before Brad resigned. The fact that the coach nor the GM were on locker cleanout day.
Yeah.
Nope. And we didn't hear from the coach. Now he is no longer the coach. Don Maloney announcing on Monday that Darryl Sutter is out. They are looking for a new GM, and that new GM will replace the coach, will hire the coach. Thought to have won this power struggle was Darryl Sutter. There was even, I saw a couple of tweets that Darryl Sutter and Don Maloney were at one of the Flames Canucks games. I guess maybe, are we surprised this happened?
Slightly.
I don't know if I'm surprised that it happened. I'm surprised in the order in which things happened, because it was said that Treliving left because he wasn't allowed to make a coaching change, and they go ahead and make the coaching change. And if they would have done that first, Tree might still be here. So I think
Maybe.
they kind of did it backwards. That's what surprises me.
Yeah, I think that's the big one is how it happened, not necessarily what happened is the more surprising thing. But yeah, I think it is still slightly surprising that like after what happened with Treliving that they actually made the move on Darryl.
Because I said going into this offseason, we were going to lose one of the two of them. I didn't expect both of them.
I kind of started to think that I wondered if the best thing for this organization was both leaving. It was an untenable situation professionally. We knew that. What else could Brad Treliving have done to improve this team? Do we need another mind there? I think that Brad Treliving did a lot of good things, but I also think that there's some things that you can criticize Brad Treliving for.
But
and
what
I think,
GM has been perfect? When you look at Treliving here for 9 years, I think we would all agree this organization is better now than when he took it over.
Okay, let me just ask this question now. And maybe this is a little early to ask this question. In terms of what has happened, where in the worst trades in Flames history is this Matthew Tkachuk trade right now?
It's still too early to call, but it's not looking great.
I agree with Sean. I mean, yes, it was a bad season. A lot of crap happened there. I think, though, it's still I don't know that we can say it's a bad deal because you had to get rid of Tkachuk either way. I don't know if there's any other deal that would have looked better than the one that they actually got. I think they got the best deal they could, and if they can bounce back next year, I think we forget about this season.
I would say that in terms of, I'm assuming that the mandate from ownership was to stay competitive. So yeah, under that mandate, I don't think that it was that you could have gotten anything better.
Yeah, and we even heard that with John Bean, right, at the press conference, pretty much saying like I'm not allowed to use the phrase rebuild, things like that.
Yeah,
but it's because I think if they were allowed to go take a step back and take more of a futures approach, they probably could have gotten a better deal. But if you're not allowed to do that and ownership won't sign off on a trade like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's still too early to tell. There's still
and I think the Flames still haven't used that first either. So I don't think we can evaluate this until all the pieces have really been in play. We don't really know what Cole Schwint is yet. We don't know what that first becomes.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But, I think that there's a lot of Flame fans. I don't know where Flame fans are at with Matthew Tkachuk, but he's clearly been a guy that, he's making an impact. But let's look at the other guy that ended up in Florida. There wasn't much getting got for Sam Bennett. The guy they got for Sam Bennett isn't in the organization anymore, right? So, I think ultimately there are a lot of things that I think Treliving did. But ultimately, I think the best thing that could have happened is both go and we get new minds in the chair. I think ultimately that probably is the best thing for the organization. How they got there was backwards, but I think ultimately this became the right decision.
There's been a lot of talk for years about what's the Flames' problem. They've gone through a lot of coaches. The GM's kind of the one thing that stayed the same. And you talked about Tkachuk. We talked about Gaudreau earlier, and Columbus and some of their issues. I think that the GM is the thing that's been constant for 9 years. And now these guys have no other excuse next year. You have a new coach. You have a new GM. If they still falter, the only other option is there's something wrong in that room.
Well, I don't think that I don't come away with this thinking that there's not a problem in this room. I think it's a very divided room. This was not a palace revolt on Darryl Sutter. There was a number of players that didn't like Darryl Sutter. But Troy Stetcher talked on Donnie and Dolly today. He enjoyed playing with Darryl Sutter. Tyler Toffoli had a career year under Darryl Sutter. So there are players thrive under Darryl Sutter. That locker room looks like a divided locker room. I
I
mean,
think
Trevor
it's-
Lewis.
But
is
it's
it
not
divided because of the coach?
Yeah, I think it's. I don't think that locker room necessarily is divided when they all get together and there's not the Darryl thing looming around them. I think it's just that there's some players that like playing for Darryl and some that don't. And in terms of how Darryl's handled a few of the players, there's definitely big question marks, and they have very much a right to say that.
Yes.
And the other, and it was to a point that they felt it was untenable. So any people going out there going, oh, the players are the inmates are running the asylum. No, this was a calculated move that said that, like, at this point we don't feel like this is the right way to go forwards. Like I think if say Darryl had another, like, if some other things went slightly differently, I don't think they would do it. But I think it was just like it got to a point where it's like they hated coming to work.
And I think that there was some division in the locker room last year, and I feel like the Flames made some changes that maybe helped that. But I think that this year, from what everybody saw and what the media heard, this was a fairly tight locker room going into the season. I think they were divided over the coach. The coach is what divided them. And Kevin, you were mentioning earlier that the guy the Flames got for Bennett, Emil Heineman, is no longer with the organization. But remember, that was turned into Tyler Toffoli.
There, okay. So
And that first round pick they got in the Tkachuk trade was also moved. Like there's conditions on that based off of the shot, using that or another Flames first round pick to move out Sean Monahan. So they have actually used it, but it's all caught up in conditions.
Yeah. But there were, I guess, just.
Yeah, and that one's got crazy conditions on it, Sean. That Florida one. It's like
that's what I said. Conditions.
If the GM's wearing a blue shirt and the draft is on a Tuesday, then they get a 20th pick. If he's wearing a green shirt and had Boston pizza that night, it's the next year's pick, and
it has even flyer conditions on it.
The Flames get Florida's 2025 first-round pick if A, Florida's 2024 first-rounder is not in the top 10, which would then go to Philadelphia in the Claude Giroux trade, and B, Florida's 2025 first-round pick is not in the top 10, and Florida keeps it. If the Flames get the first-rounder, then Calgary's 2025 fourth-round pick goes to Florida. Those are the official conditions.
It's insane. Like, yeah, because I'm on Cap Friendly, and there's like, you've got what the scenario, like, there's like,
and then the one tied up in that as well is the Montreal pick that Montreal got in the Monahan deal. Montreal shall receive the better of Calgary's 2026 first-round pick or Florida's 2026 first-round pick following the determination of the 2026 lottery results. So, yeah, the whole thing is kind of a mess.
Yeah.
I think that was the day that Tree said that he was moving his daughter into university, and he did the deal all day. I think he just didn't want to move anything. So he just kept talking on the phone to get crazier and crazier.
I think
the desk is coming out. All right, let's add another condition.
Yeah. Oh, hang on, honey. So I guess, well, now we do know that there's going to be a new general manager and a new coach. Now, I guess the obvious start here is general manager. Is it anyone other than Craig Conroy at this point in your mind?
No.
Considering the Flames, or I should say Don Maloney, told us they want somebody young, I think it's either going to be Craig Conroy or Brad Pascal. If they said they wanted somebody more seasoned, there's other guys I could think of, but I think those are the two that get the hardest look.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any of the hot the names that the internet always goes crazy over when there's a GM opening, whether it's the guy down in Carolina or whatever. I think it's going to be internal. I think it's going to be Craig Conroy.
And I think the team that's going to be looking for another one of those guys, we have to remember there's another opening right now with the Penguins, so we're not the only team hiring at this point. And I think that the U.S. job will be more attractive for a lot of those guys.
You've got the Flyers hiring a president of hockey ops, I believe, or GM, and or I can't remember what Daniel Briere's
No.
actual title is. And then you've got Pittsburgh. Yeah,
His official title is
Pittsburgh
dad of the guy who kicked the wheelchair.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And then you've got Pittsburgh hiring potentially 2 positions or just one. And then so I think you are. And then depending on what happens with Toronto.
Well, and not just Toronto. I think there could still be a couple teams, even first round exits, where we might still see some departures.
Yep.
I sort of wonder what's up in Winnipeg with Kevin Shovel-Day-off.
Winnipeg's a big one.
I think Winnipeg could be looking for a GM and a coach, especially after their coach's tirade there.
Yeah, as far as I know, they aren't going. At least if it's up to Shovel-Day-off, Bonus will stay. They're either going to have none or both. I think in Winnipeg. Trying to think who else potentially here.
Well, I think the Rangers. I would not be surprised if the Rangers change coaches.
Rangers changing coaches, but I don't think they're going to be changing any.
Not GM. No.
Drury's there. So, but yeah, I think the Flames are going to. I think it's going to be tough to recruit any of the top sort of AGMs around the league, but I also think that they are quite happy. They have been grooming Conroy for this role.
And I think that there's a bit of a dominoes effect. If we do go out and get somebody else, I think you will lose Conroy. Like, I think Conroy's at that point now where if they don't hire him, he will apply for one of those other jobs we're talking about and probably get it. So I think you've got to figure out what's the value in Craig. Are you saying, yeah, we're willing for you to go somewhere else? We don't see you as GM material here? Or, do you have to bring him in?
Yeah.
Because I think there was talk, a few years ago, that he was one of the finalists for the Buffalo job. Like, there's been interest in him.
And I could see multiple teams being interested in him. Even if it's, I don't know how long his contract is, and if he might be looking elsewhere.
So the rumor is that both AGMs are probably up at the end of the year.
This year or next?
They have one more season, so it'll be the end
season?
of the next hockey season. Yeah.
So even then, like if that's the case and he gets passed up, I wouldn't be surprised to see him looking at, say, well, where else has he played? St. Louis. I could see him going there.
And even if you have a contract, we know and we've seen it before where you can ask for permission to talk to Conroy, and I think that team then has to buy him out or whatever. So I could even see him just saying, "Hey, obviously it's time to move on."
And then depending on who the GM is, they want to bring their own.
Well, that's it. Yeah, if it's a veteran guy, I can see them wanting to bring somebody in. Now, let me put this by you guys. If you bring in Conroy, and I think Conroy's great, but I think one of the strengths that Brad had when he came in as GM is he had Brian Burke. And Burke is a strong and experienced GM. I'm not sure Maloney's the same way. I wonder if you go out and you find a guy who's maybe not going to get a GM job again. I'll throw a name out there like Ray Shero, who I think the league might have passed by. And if you could bring a guy in like that to be your assistant to replace Conroy, to bring in some veteran depth. So if you had Conroy as your GM, you've got your president of hockey ops as Maloney, and let's say you had Shero and Pascal as your AGMs with Snowy in there too.
I mean, Maloney's been around. He was the vice president of player personnel and assistant GM to Glenn Sather with the Rangers from 96 to 07. He was GM of the Coyotes for a while there. I don't see them doing that. I think they've got that guy in Maloney.
And I guess the question is then, do you replace Conroy and have 3 AGMs still, or do you go with just Pascal and Snowy?
Well, I was thinking that they bring in, I don't know if they bring in a veteran per se. Like, I don't see a Ray Shero being a fit in the Calgary organization.
Or even an AHL veteran or a dub veteran or something like that.
I could see them not getting one of the hot candidates, like not an Eric Tulsky, or I don't know who else is. I'm trying to look.
Tulsky's not leaving Carolina unless he gets a full, like he's the guy.
Yeah,
he is AGM.
Yeah, he's not going to move from AGM to AGM. He would have to.
But I could see maybe them bringing in sort of a under the radar person to be an AGM to replace Conroy. Someone a
Well,
little young.
I totally expect them to replace Conroy because as much as we love Chris Snow and all that, like unfortunately he's limited with what he can do.
Yeah, but a
So
lot
I
of
think they're
teams at the
gonna
same time don't have 3 AGMs. Like, the Flames did. So I think you could probably get away with Pascal and Maloney and go with those two as well.
Okay,
what I expect is like someone who's like been a scout or something like that stepping up, whether it's within the Flames organization or elsewhere.
because Todd Button could be a person that you move into sort of that area. He's been with the organization for a really long time. He's drafted. The drafting department has improved under him. I think he is worthy of some sort of promotion, and then you kind of build from there. I guess from Murray Edwards' perspective, I think it might be. I think the overall smarter thing to do would probably land Conroy in that position, bring in an AGM from somewhere else, and then let me just ask: is there a place for Jerome McGinley in this organization?
Before you go there, here's an interesting scout to promote. Bob Murray is, I believe, a Flames scout right now.
He's got some baggage with him, though.
He does, but I think as an AGM, you can control some of that. I wouldn't make him the GM, but maybe that's the scout you promote.
I wouldn't make him the AGM either. I think if you're gonna do that, it's Todd Button makes a lot of sense. Bringing in Iggy in that role makes sense too.
I think Iggy is a better coach than GM. Like, I think he's done a lot of coaching stuff. He's proven that he's better at that. I would want to keep him on the coaching side, but you don't bring that guy as the head coach. I think if you're going to bring him in, you bring him in as maybe a Wrangler's assistant and let him work his way up.
I think the best spot for Iggy would be very similar to what the Sedins are doing with the Canucks as special consultants or however you want to, and then working with more player development.
And we don't even know that Jerome wants the position. He was in Calgary watching a Wranglers game and, stuff swirled. I've been to a Wranglers game and nobody talked about me being the head coach afterwards. Like, even the pictures that are out there, people like, he's talking to Maloney. No, he wasn't. He was talking to the media guys. If you look at it closely, it's Kelso and it's the media guys he's talking to. Sean Kelso's in there. We don't know that Iggy wants that. And I think Iggy's very happy where he is in Kelowna. I could see Iggy doing some sort of developmental scouting for the Flames. That's about it.
I could see him. I would love to see him work with a Matt Coronado a little bit and a Jacob. I could see him in that role.
And I think if you want to try it out, even just bring him to the Penticton tournament and let him kind of be around the team and see how he does there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we all know the relationship between Conroy and Iginla, so that makes some sense.
I have to remind people too, though, generally the good coaches don't make the good players don't make good coaches. Like, look at the best coaches. They generally were not the best NHLers. And Gretzky made a terrible coach. So I'm not convinced that, as much as fans like the guy, I'm not sure he's the best, job for the professional.
The problem
coach.
with a lot of those guys, those good players, is that they were thrown in. They were like, "Oh, you were good, so look, we're going to hire you as the head coach," and then they didn't have they didn't go through they were assistant coaches and learn the trade.
Learn the
right. And you're right there. And that's why I kind of said, Sean, if you're going to bring him in, do it slow. Bring him in as a Wranglers AGM and let him work, or an assistant coach, and let him work his way up.
Yeah, I think if you're going internal, and I'm going to include Jerome in there because the connection there, Todd Button makes a lot of sense because he's already the director of amateur scouting. You can literally just give the title of AGM, but he within his silo is still just scouting.
And that's what Connie did a lot of. Connie did a lot of scouting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And I don't know that Jerome will come to professional hockey and whatever that looks like until his kid has gone pro. Like, I think right now, from what I can see, he's enjoying working with his son. And I don't know now is the time for him to go pro.
Well, he's got his daughter is going to be a star too. So
Yeah.
Well, I think what I did see was it's not this year. He's going to wait till maybe not till Tish is pro, but at least a year or two away before he even thinks about like doing that full time. Like he could do a part-time player development role for sure.
And we have to remember he owns the Blazers at least partially. Like I think if he's going to go coach, I don't see why it wouldn't be with Kamloops to start.
I don't see him coaching in Kamloops, but I just
or GMing. Like if you want him to be your AGM, I'd say go run your team in Kamloops and show us you can do it.
Yeah. I think eventually we'll see Jerome in some capacity be more involved in the organization, but
and I don't know if that's as a hockey ops guy or doing like a Lanny role where he's really just the spokesman for the organization. But we got to remember too, Jerome's not here, and I don't know if Jerome wants to be in Calgary, which he'd have to do for that.
Yeah,
I don't see him being I don't see him in a Lanny role. If he's anything, I think he'd be again similar to what the scenes are, where he can be based out of Kamloops, work with not only just maybe and then come in and work with like the Wranglers or even the Flames part time, but also go and work with junior prospects, NCAA prospects, and just.
And we've seen the Flames a lot at their junior camps and stuff. Before Stajan was a coach, they had him on the ice. So I could see stuff like that let's just bring him out there. Let's put him on the ice. Let's, like you said, have him work with guys or put him in a player development role, but let him stay where he is. Because I get no sense that this guy wants to move back to Calgary.
At least in the immediate future, yeah.
Yeah. I also... just thinking about this, I wonder if some point we see Jerome McGinley in the NHL office in some sort of player PR kind of role. I think there's a lot that Jerome McGinley, just with his personality, can contribute. I would not be surprised if we see Jerome McGinley work for the NHL at some point too.
I think even before that, you could see Jerome, especially, and we'll talk more about the BCHL later, but as Hockey Canada tries to reform their image, I think Jerome would be a great guy to join a Hockey Canada staff at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
lots of options out there.
Especially like a U18 Hockey Canada staff.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of options. He's got the world in his hands here.
I think if you're looking to promote a coach from internally, the guy that might surprise is Stajan. Stajan's an assistant coach with the Hitmen still, I believe, and I could see him either being promoted to an NHL head coach or a Wranglers head assistant, NHL assistant, or even, if Love comes up, maybe getting a look at a Wranglers job, whether head or not. But I think you'll see them promote within the organization more that way.
Okay, let's start with Mitch Love. Is there any other GM candidates that we should throw in before we go there? Is there any other GM candidates that we could consider?
Not off the top of my head. I know that they sounded like Mark Hunter was apparently as a name that has been thrown around, Mike Fuda. But I think
you have to interview those guys. And I thought Fuda was more of an option when we thought Darryl would be the coach because those guys work together. But the fact that Maloney said they want somebody new, I think you'd be foolish not to interview Hunter and Fuda and some of those guys. But I think the fact that they said they want new and young and fresh, I think we're going to see someone sort of like the Brad Treliving model, who's an AGM that we've never seen before as an NHL general manager.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, is there any women that we think could be a candidate here?
I honestly, I'm sure there are. I just don't know who they are right now.
It would be a conflict of interest to make Cassie an AGM with her husband, right?
Well, there's also Rebecca Johnson that does some work in the organization.
Yeah, she's more player development.
Yeah, I think she's more on the coaching side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure that fits where she's at right now.
Yeah. No, I just thought it would.
No, I mean, there's Jessica Campbell who's done some assistant coaching work in the AHL, but again, I think she's more on the coaching side.
And then there's
they're probably out there, but again, I just don't know who at this point.
There's Jay Feaster's daughter who was part of the U.S. junior goal team in
Isn't she already
2021.
an AGM somewhere?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going for just some random old NHLer's daughter, I'm sure there's a Sutter daughter available somewhere. There's enough of
I
them.
don't believe that. I'm sorry. I think it's only the males.
I mean, if we really want to kind of go within the organization for an AGM job, Jeff Chenoweth, who's the GM of the Hitmen, I could see him getting a promotion even to be the AHL GM or something. Like the Flames like to kind of bring guys up from within.
Yeah. The Matt Station, I just hold the Matt Station one there because I wouldn't mind bringing it up. But let's talk. I think there's a lot of people on the Mitch Love train. Can I be honest? I know they had a great year. I know that the Wranglers, there's a lot of legitimate arguments because if we've seen the success, but if it's me and I look at Mitch Love, I would rather put him in a position to be an assistant coach in the National Hockey League before I throw him in a very veteran environment. I just don't see this particular group of Flames players being a fit for where Mitch Love is at. If this was a younger team overall, I would say, okay, I would be more open to it, but I don't see this as a fit at this point.
I mean, just because he's an AHL coach doesn't mean that he can't handle veterans.
I just worry about the.
I'd rather it be Mitch if I'm making an internal one. I'd rather it be Mitch Love, who's already knows how to be a head coach and has been a head coach with a lot of some of these players, as opposed to doing any the assistant coaches promotions, because making that transition within the same team is a lot tougher than making the transition from AHL to NHL.
I think the other guy internally, though, Sean, that people are sleeping on is Huska.
And that's where I was actually getting at is you've got Huska, Muller as potential assistant coaches to head coach. It's just if you're going to question whether or not Mitch Love can make the jump from the AHL to the NHL, I think it's fair to say the same thing about jumping from an assistant coach where you're most of the time you're the good guy to the head coach where you have to crack the whip a lot more.
And I also wonder, sort of like we said with Conroy, if they don't promote Love, would you lose him? Like, is there another NHL team that might come calling, wanting him as a head coach, and are you willing to lose him?
I mean, you can say that about Huska, but I think I think jumping from an assistant coach in one team to a head coach in another makes the transition easier.
Yeah. And having been in the NHL for 5 years now, I think, okay, he knows the game at the NHL level. I don't fundamentally disagree with what Kevin's saying. I think let's say that the Flames were to promote Ryan Huska and put Mitch Love in Huska's role, I could see that as long as you've kind of got that succession plan. But sort of like we were saying with Conroy and Pascal, where you might lose one, I think if you promote Love over Huska, you could lose Huska. And again, I think they've got to really figure out what they want to do.
I think all those assistant coaches, I think, our deals are up this year as well.
Yeah, and even if they're not, I think the Flames at that point would, if someone came calling and wanted your guy, I think they would have to sort of, say, yeah, okay, have that conversation. We'll let him go.
So I guess maybe is the new coach in the organization or outside of the organization? Or maybe let me reword the question. Would you prefer the coach be from inside the organization or outside of the organization?
I think the Flames need to be looking outside. I think we're going to have an internal candidate taking the GM role. I think you need to go outside to really reset things, especially within the locker room.
What I want and what I think might happen are two different things. If, let's assume Conroy gets the GM job. He's been around the Flames forever. He knows Huska really well. He knows Love a little bit. I think that because he's around and they've said the GM will get to pick their own coach, I could see Connie going with Huska because he's more familiar with them. I could see Pascal going with Love because Pascal's been the GM of the farm team for a while. I think Pascal, from what I understand, was also part of the big proponent of hiring Love. So I think that's going to depend on who the GM is. If it's somebody from outside, they probably don't know either candidate. So they might go with a Vigneault or someone like that because that's who they're familiar with. So I think a lot of that really depends on who the GM is.
Okay, but what would you rather have happen?
I would rather have, if we're going to promote internally, I'd rather have Huska. But I think at this point, you need somebody who has a little bit of NHL head coaching experience. And I think I would give a serious look to Andrew Burnett.
Yeah, he's on my list. Yeah, he's the number one guy on my list because of the work he's done with Huberdeau, the work he's done.
Less than a year, well, just over a year away from being a Jack Adams finalist. What he's done with Huberdeau, he's a young enough guy that I think he's got some new ways of doing things. I think that you need to at least give him a long look.
Okay, my only thing with Brunette is how much of what Florida did that year was because of Brunette, or was versus all the legwork that Quenneville did leading up to that, even though I know that name is a little bit hot when you talk about that. That's my only thing with Brunette there. Because
I don't disagree.
Huberdeau and Weeder were both very good leading into that. They just, especially Huberdeau, had a career year that one time.
But I think we could ask similar questions of Husko or Love either, right? None of them are proven.
Yeah.
And it might come down to one guy's a Jack Adams nominated. Let's give him another shot.
Yeah, and I mean, he navigated that team through some pretty difficult, I would assume some pretty difficult circumstances considering what we're talking about with Quenneville. And for the record, I don't
think it was as difficult as it necessary you would think, because it's down in Florida.
No, it wasn't like the huge fanfare, but I mean, I still think that could be a challenge for sure.
Oh, I'm not saying it wasn't a challenge. I'm saying it's a completely different monster if you're in a bigger market. If that happened and it was any Canadian market or one of the bigger American markets,
I think
that's a completely different monster.
I mean, the Calgary Flames just made Darryl Sutter one of Canada's richest ranchers, giving him $8 million to go away. I can also see them wanting a cost-effective coach. And we've seen that for a number of coaches before Darryl. It was always rumored they're going with the cost-effective option. And I think Love or Huska is definitely the cost-effective option, because you're probably just paying them what you're paying them now, at least for one more year.
Okay, let me then toss another different question into this mix before. How important is it to keep both Michael Backlund and Elias Lindholm somewhat happy?
It's very important to keep Lindholm happy because his contract's coming up. You can still sign him and he can still be a top center for this team for at least a few more years. Backlund's getting up in age. It's not necessarily as important, but as a locker room guy, I think it comes part and parcel with if you get one, you get both.
Yeah, I look at it two ways. I mean, I think any player that's on your roster has to be happy. And if the thing that makes Michael Backlund happy is trading him, then you got to trade him. I think it's like the Sam Bennett thing. He wanted the trade, so you keep him happy that way. I don't think you want a grumpy player here. But I think that with any sort of coaching turnover, GM turnover, there's always going to be guys that don't like the decision. And I think the Flames have a great argument, say, hey, it's better than our last guy. But I think of the two, you definitely have to favor Elias. But I think that I don't see any problem with bringing in a coach that both guys could like.
And like I said, I think if you get one, you get both.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I could honestly see Backlund wearing the C next year.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm in the opinion that I think they need to go outside the organization. I just think, I mean, I wasn't in that, obviously, with the exit interviews and all of that's being reported. I think most of that is Sutter, but I still think, like, even with Muller or Huska, I still think there might be a little bit of that Sutter baggage.
And I think you need a very different type of coach. I mean, I think they are going to go with a very player-friendly coach, because I think you're almost trying to not only do the opposite, but to show the players, hey, we've done what you guys wanted. Here's the coach you wanted. And I wouldn't be surprised if in exit interviews the question was asked, do you think Ryan Huska could be a head coach for this team? Would you play for him?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you had an hour of a conversation, there's probably a lot going.
That'd be interesting because I don't
think it was
that
just
would be-
him. I wouldn't be surprised if they asked that of all the assistants. What do you think
I
of
think
McLean?
if you're gonna have,
what do you think of
if you're gonna ask
Jelena?
that, yeah. Bring back Jelena.
Well,
He's
Jelena's still on the coaching staff.
He's on the
Well,
coaching
yeah,
staff.
he's a development coach.
Yep.
Rewinding it back, Teresa Feaster is the player of hockey operations or director of hockey operations for an NCAA team.
Can I throw out a couple other possible names that I've rounded up? Get your
I have
guys'
some
thoughts on
names
them?
too, but
Alan
go ahead.
Vigneault.
No,
Vigneault's not a
Boudreau.
player. Vigneault is. Vigneault can be a player's coach, but you have to earn it.
Vigneault's kind of between a player's coach and Darryl Sutter.
I think Vigneault could go one of two ways. It could work, and he could take this team, this roster, to the next level, but it could also backfire the way Darryl backfired. I think it's too volatile there.
I agree. What about Rick Tocchet?
Well, obviously he's in Vancouver. That's not going to happen.
That's true. What about okay?
He'd be perfect for this team, but I'm so glad he's a Canuck.
What about Boudreau?
You want to hear my outlandish theory? I believe that Brad Treliving wanted to replace Bruce Boudreau with Darryl Sutter.
Interesting.
I think Bruce is too almost too hands off. I think it would be I just don't think it would work. I think if you look at how for a short term, like if this was like halfway through the season,
I think Boudreau
could see it work. But
I think Boudreau could work if you had a guy like Love or Huska as the associate, who's really the one running the thing and learning under the learning tree from him, and that's the guy who's hands on.
Yeah, you would need some structural people around him.
What do we think about Muller? I mean, Muller's the associate.
I am not a fan of Kirk Muller as a head coach. I don't think he's. We've seen him have a couple of kicks at the Canada head coach, and it just hasn't worked.
I agree. How about Travis Green?
No.
Again, he very much similar to Vigneault, and I don't think he's got the right structure. I don't think it would work.
What about Jeff Blashill?
Well, that's right.
I don't think
he took Detroit to the playoffs in 15-16, his first season in the league. He's now an assistant in Tampa Bay. I could see him being a potential guy you at least talk to.
Well, I know that Washington's interviewing Jeff Halpern.
Yes.
I don't think Blashill gets the job, but I think if you're looking for guys sort of like Brunette, who has a little bit of an NHL experience, a guy who knows the league a little bit, I think he's a guy to look at. He was really at Detroit at the time they were tanking, and I don't know we got a real look at what he can do as a coach because of it.
I like the idea of Blashill as a potential head coach in this league starting next season, whether it's Calgary, Anaheim, Washington. Another
guy that I think you could see is Rocky Thompson. He's been an associate coach with the Sharks for a couple seasons. Now he's assistant in with the Flyers. I think he's another one of those guys that's ready maybe to take that jump.
Can see that, yeah.
But I think this comes down to, do we want a rookie coach, as Kevin was saying, to lead this team to the playoffs?
And you're likely there's a chance that you're going to have a good chance if you go internal, you're going to have Pascal or Conroy as your GM. You're going to have a rookie GM and a rookie coach potentially.
If we're looking at Huska and Love, I will remind people that Huska has made the playoffs pretty much every year except for 3 until he got to Calgary. And Mitch Love has made the playoffs only 2 years, in 18-19 and then in 21-22 and now this year. So if we're looking for a guy who has some sort of playoff experience, Huska's that guy. He's had success at the AHL level, the WHL level.
Yeah. I've got a couple of other names I would like to throw
I think
into
the real question here I have is, does Mitch Love want an NHL job? Like, there's some guys that are enjoying being in the AHL and being that development coach.
He's 2 years into coaching in the AHL. It also might be picking and choosing the next step.
I agree. Yeah. And that's another reason I think that you might go with Husk, because you know what you've got there. And I think it might be, like you said, Sean, you know what, Mitch? You're doing well. Keep doing it. Keep being at that AHL level and being awesome.
Yeah. I'll throw out a couple of other names into this mix. Bob Bugner, who does have a history with this organization. He did play for the Flames. He does have head coaching experience. He has some junior experience. It wasn't a good experience in San Jose, but I have heard his name. I'm going to toss another name that might be a little under the radar, but he has some history with this organization. It's Ryan McGill. He's an assistant in New Jersey, and he's turned around that blue line for sure. That would be a guy I would not be surprised if at least the Flames interview for the position. Little under the radar, but that would be another guy.
And also a guy that Connie worked with and is probably familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one that I think he hasn't been talked about because the Devils are still in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I guess the question is at this point, if a coach loses their job still from a team that's active, which I think we might see one active team switch coaches after this, is that guy kind of at the top of your interview list?
Okay, so here would be the three of the playoff teams that I think might be available. I think Gerard Gallant is going to be available. I think you have to interview him at least.
They'll interview him, but they won't hire him.
You don't think so?
Yeah.
We're working on a budget here, Dan.
Yeah.
If there was no budget, I would agree with you. I think Gallant is the best option. But I think.
But again, I think he might also be. Is he enough of a player's coach too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think even if he's not, though, I think guys would want to play for him because he's had that success. And I think if you say, hey, Gallant's coming in, he's got playoff success, he's going to take us there, I think you could get players to buy into Gerard.
Okay, here's the two others that I know that you're going to I know you'll disagree with me on this, and you
I
may
disagree
think
with you.
All right, but I would not be surprised if Jim Montgomery becomes available in Boston.
He won't be.
But it's such an interesting person. I think at least you interview him. And I'm going to throw another name. You know, if Kyle Dubas is on the hot seat in Toronto, what about Sheldon Keefe?
Like, if he's available, I think that's someone you look at. But again, I think I honestly, with him working with the Leafs and at least the regular season success that they've had, I think he'd be out of the Flames budget.
I also think that there will be other teams that would fire their coach to bring Keefe in. Like, I think if he becomes available, he's a hot commodity.
And I think it'd be the same thing with Jim Montgomery. I think he's even if in the slightest remote possibility that he gets fired, he's also someone that after what he did with Boston this year, teams would make that move to hire him.
I agree.
And he'd have enough of an interest that he'd be out of the Flames budget for at least this next coach.
One guy I'm surprised who's still employed is Craig Berube. I thought that he would have been fired very quickly after the season with St. Louis having a disappointing season. If he became available, I think he could be of interest to the Flames.
Yeah, that was another name that
maybe
I thought of.
Again, with the NHL experience, I'm trying to think of coaches with potential coaches with NHL experience that wouldn't be too.
What team
expensive.
was it a couple of years ago where they had, was it Hitchcock as their head coach and they had a hot guy as their associate coach, kind of saying soak up everything you can in 1 year because Hitch is retiring. I think that's the way it was. And I could see the Flames doing something like that. It's like, let's bring in Berube as the head coach. Let's put Lover, Huska as the associate, knowing we got 1 year out of this guy, and then it's your bench or something like that.
St. Louis or Edmonton did that.
Yeah,
I think.
In my mind, I said it's one of the blue teams. but it wasn't Edmonton. I don't think it was St. Louis. Maybe it was Minnesota. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think he ever. I'm pretty sure it was one of St. Louis or Edmonton because I don't think
We'll find out.
he's coached anywhere else.
Was it Dallas?
Was it?
That 1 year he was in Dallas?
No.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I could see a guy like that bringing in a guy like Berube to say, hey, we want to go all the way. We need to bring in a veteran guy. Let's bring in a guy like Craig, knowing, again, they're going to have a short shelf life, but the players have to buy into it. And I wouldn't be surprised if trying to win the players back, the team, whether that's Maloney or Conroy, has already kind of asked the guys, who would you want to see as our head coach?
It was the Oilers.
Yeah, it was like.
That
I think
was
that
after-
he's been in that role a couple times actually, Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Because I think he had it with St. Louis with Yo,
Yeah.
as well as because he did the 1 year with the 3/4, 5/8 of a year.
Yeah.
Because he was named the head coach on November 20th.
And I think the other thing we're not talking about here is that a new head coach may come in and not want to retain some of this coaching staff, and especially if it's an experienced guy. And I could see somebody like, let's say, Berube, just because I was talking about him, coming in saying, hey, I don't want to retain the staff. Let's bring in Burnett as an associate or something like that to, again, have that more youthful energy. But we did hear from Kadri this year, or some of the rumors in the grapevine was that he liked the sort of younger approach that Colorado's coaching staff took and a more modern take. So I think you do want to go with someone who's younger and more modern and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Andrew Burnett situation here too. I wonder how long Lindy Ruff is going to be the coach in New Jersey. Like, he is at a retirement age. That I wonder if Brunette is the heir apparent in New Jersey.
But I think at some point, again, too, that's if he's available, right? I don't know that he's going to not take over in Calgary to go there. Like, I think if they want him, they're going to have to jump on him.
If he gets an opportunity, he's going to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and how has an heir apparent actually worked?
I think it depends what we look at as
well,
working.
Historically, yes, John Muckler was the heir apparent to Glenn Sather. That worked.
We don't need to go back into the fucking 80s. Like, I'm talking since the Cap era. Because
I think
the game's changed so fucking much.
I think that if we are looking at a Mitch Love equivalent, Gerald Bednar is the best equivalent. A guy who had a lot of success at the sort of minor league level and then came to the NHL and had success there as well.
Well, I think that's different than what Kevin's getting at in terms of you bring in like that veteran,
okay, yeah,
and then you've got the heir apparents on the NHL staff, and then they take that jump up.
I guess depends what we look at as being the heir apparent. And Suns is not the same staff, but we've seen guys who have apprenticed with one guy and they got hired as a different head coach. Like, I would say Keefe came up that way in some ways. Not necessarily with the same guy, but, apprenticed one place and went somewhere else. I think Derek Lalonde sort of did that. Detroit's head coach. So I think there are guys, I guess it's a matter of what we classify as success.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Keefe was also someone who went from AHL to NHL head coach.
Yeah.
And I think when you go from that, I think it works. So when you go from the associate, when you have that associate where it's the names that come to mind are Mike Yeo, Todd Richards. We've got Kirk Muller here in Calgary as well. And I think he even had that at some point as well. I think it is tough to make that jump, which is why it's.
So if we want to look at that sort of apprentice role, Kev, I would even say look at a guy like Dean Evison, right, who was Washington's assistant. He was an NHL or an AHL head coach. Then he was a Minnesota assistant, then became that head again. I think he might be the most current example of a guy to sort of have that model.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just the other one I sort of was thinking that might fit that would be Lane Lambert, but I mean, we can't say that he's been successful yet, but that has been a,
I guess it depends. I mean, I would say anyone who coaches in the show is successful.
Yeah.
Well, I think in terms of like taking over and either do you take the team to the next level or continue or can keep the team at that same
and
level.
I think DJ Smith is one too. Again, he was a Toronto head coach for a while. He was ready to take the next step, and Ottawa hired him. Like, I think not necessarily the heir apparent for the same team, but got to that point where you're ready to leave the nest.
No, and I think that's where it is, and I think that might be where Huska is. And I think honestly, Huska's future probably lies outside of Calgary. Whether
sort of
it's
like
another
we were saying, I think Sean with Conroy, right? I think if they don't get the jobs here, they might leave. Both guys.
Yeah.
One other name, I don't know if he's gonna. He's not. I'm just going to precurse this.
And before you go there, Kev, I just want to remind everyone there are currently 4 NHL coaching jobs available. So for all these guys, the Flames really have to figure out they're not the only one looking for a coach.
Yeah. Well, this is one that I'm very curious.
Calgary, Washington, and
Columbus.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the guy I'm wondering about. I'm very curious.
And I think Pittsburgh could come up because I think a new
that's
GM
where I
might
was
hire
about
Sullivan.
Yeah, that's where I was going. I wonder about the future of Mike Sullivan. And I don't think he's going to fit. He's not in the Calgary budget for sure, but
he's also someone, if he comes available, like just like Dan said for a couple others, like teams will fire their coach to
bring him in. Yeah.
Or let's say he becomes, let's say even if he becomes available tomorrow, I think that he would interview with Columbus, Anaheim, and Washington, get one of those jobs. The only way he would be affordable is like if we just paid Darryl $8 million to go away. If they paid Sullivan a whole bunch of money to go away and he was willing to come cheap just to coach.
But even then, I don't think I think the way that works is if you get another job, the team, the firing team pays the difference. I think is how it works. I could be wrong though. So
it's happened before.
I know.
I think Sullivan is a guy that will find a job if he's fired, and I think it'll be stateside.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see a lot of people offering beer to try to get Mike Sullivan into their organization for sure.
Mike Sullivan has has one more year on his current contract, and then is signed through the 26-27 season on another deal. So I know we just saw Darryl get let go before an extension kicks in. I just don't see that happening with Pittsburgh though.
No, yeah, I guess in terms of like just touching on the Dubas part, like I know that everybody's got this target with Pittsburgh and Dubas. I don't foresee Pittsburgh dropping a whole bunch of money for Dubas. Like I don't see it. Maybe
if I'm Pittsburgh and Dubas comes available, I'd probably go for Treliving before I'd go for Dubas.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I think Treliving gets a job before Dubas. I really do.
I think for where that organization's going, I think we can all agree that they're probably past their prime right now. I think we've seen Tree being a good developmental GM who can make those moves and have a long-term plan. I think that's what Pittsburgh needs.
Yeah.
I think, dude, I think it's a coin flip between the two.
I guess my thing is,
you can make an argument for both.
What has Dubas actually achieved? I'm not trying to be rude to the guy, but he's been treading water since he got to Toronto. Like, what is his legacy in Toronto going to be?
Because when did he get brought in?
I think if you look at what they've achieved, I think we can say Tree has had success that's measurable. I don't know what you say Dubas's success is.
What is okay, but
this is a great poll question.
I might put the Treliving signal up, and Devin might come after me after this one. But it's just, what success have the Flames had, like sustained success the Flames have had under Treliving?
And I don't know if it's been sustained.
He's had some good draft picks and all that, but it just he hasn't found a way to put it all together. Similarly to Dubas.
Okay, well, let's break down a couple of the GM's jobs. Who's signed better contracts, Tree or Dubas? Better value contracts for the organization.
Signed?
Like, if you look at guys they've signed as UFAs or extensions, I think Tree's put together the better value contracts. He's got guys that really.
Oh no, I have
value.
to. I would have to respectfully disagree with that.
Who is he signed that's been outside of Rasmus Anderson? Who is he signed that's been on really good deals?
I think most of his deals have been really good.
Lindholm was where?
Lindholm was a good deal.
Lindholm didn't sign with them.
Yeah, I was just going to say Lindholm. My Lindholm came from Carolina.
I'm pretty sure he re-signed right after he got here.
Don't think so. I'm pretty sure Lindholm and Hanifin came with those contracts.
I think if we look at a lot of the even the goaltending, I think, yes, he had a bad year this year. I think Markstrom's on a good deal for what they needed. I think that he's signed quite a few really good deals for where guys need to be in the lineup. I mean, sure, he's messed up a few.
He got Mark Giordano on an undervalued.
Gio was a good deal. Yep, I would say at the time
was a good deal too.
Brody was a good deal when he was here.
No, I'm talking about Dubas. Dubas signed Gio at a good deal.
I think both guys got Gio at a good deal for where he was.
And then he got Joe Thornton.
I'll stand corrected. The Lindholm was a Flames contract. And then they must have signed both of them immediately.
They signed them shortly after they arrived. Yeah, because then they both came on a 1 year, and they signed them shortly after they got here.
You got those three, but you look at the length of the Blake Coleman deal, that's too long. You look at I would say not getting Mangiapane locked up long term before the breakout cost them a couple million. I would say that. Then you look at the length of the deals that he signed, the three players that came in last year, I think is questionable.
I think those you've got to look at with a bit of a different light because that was almost an emergency scenario.
Yeah. Okay. So I still think that there's a lot of criticism to the Dubas part. I think that I still would criticize that Tavares contract. I guess we're going to find out what they're going to pay on. What's coming up for Dubas now is the Austin Matthews contract that I think is going to be a significant situation. And I think the one thing I would criticize Dubas for is all the trades he made in this trade deadline. I know he got around past the first round, but I'm sorry, giving up Rasmus Sandin for Eric Gustafsson. I mean, I think that's a bad trade.
Depending on how far down the lineup you want to go. I think they're giving Kelly Yarncroke 5 years with modified no trade is a bad deal. But we can't just look at the current lineups either. I mean, we'd have to go back and look year by year. I think that, the current lineups are one thing, but sometimes you sign a guy and trade them, and there's value in that as well.
Yeah. I still would say that Dubas has done him over. These guys, he was able to get Gio Thornton, Wayne Simmons, and a few other guys. And then granted, I have to put the caveat that this is Toronto, not Calgary. But he was able to get some people on some pretty low-value contracts to kind of move some very difficult cap situations around.
I think that's not necessarily Dubas. That's more just a situation.
I think any of us could have done that if we were the GM in Toronto too.
Mm-hmm. I guess the big question for me about Dubas, the other question would be the handling of goaltending overall.
That's an issue for sure.
Yeah.
I think Dubas.
That's why I think it's a toss up, and I think both are gonna. I don't think both are gonna be rushing into.
No, I don't think so either. And I think both will look for the right job.
Time.
I don't know. I have a strong feeling that Kyle Dubas may not be an NHL general manager again. I don't know. I have this feeling that he might want to move on. He seems like a very intelligent guy. I'm not sure that maybe he goes to work for the league or he goes to do something else, but I just feel like maybe he's looking for a different challenge. Who knows?
Oh, he's got some waters to navigate though too, because you've got to deal with that Austin Matthews contract. Is gonna that's gonna be a big question for sure.
Assuming he's the guy, because like it comes down to what happens after if they can't come back in this series, and it's a quick series. They got to the second round, but is it like what? It's still the same. Right?
I think we're all forgetting the number one GM free agent, John Chaika, the youngest NHL GM in history. He now lives with his wife, Catherine, and they own 12 Wendy's franchises.
Yeah. Get Treliving and Chaika together, and you could have all the good food.
There you go.
By the way, just on a side note, just back to coaching, you know who I hope definitely deserves a second shot after he gets relieved from his position is Andre Turgeon in Arizona. He's done a really good job there, and I think it's unfortunate the crap that he's been put through.
When you take a job with Arizona.
But you know what I mean? At some point, if that's the job that's available, you take it, right? If I was
he's done such a great job, though.
Yeah, and if I get hired by Arizona, I take it because I'm in the show.
Yeah.
Even if it means my office is an outhouse outside their 5,000-seat arena, I take it because I'm still coaching the show.
Yeah. So if Arizona wins the lottery, do they require Connor Bedard to wear a mullet?
If Arizona wins the lottery, I really hope Connor Bedard pulls an Eric Lindros.
I have a strong feeling the league is going to do everything it can to make sure that Bedard does not go to Arizona or Chicago. I think after all the
if you're conspiracy theorying it, I think you're right.
I think that Bettman would rather he goes to any Canadian market than those two. And we know how much Bettman doesn't want these guys going to Canadian markets. Like, I think they will do what they can to not have him play in those markets.
Do we know what's happened with did that vote go through for Arizona's the next attempt at an arena?
I don't think it has yet.
Okay.
But even then, it's going to be a few years away, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be like sort of coming to Calgary. You're probably 3-4 years away from that.
Yeah.
It's it's this week. No, it's not.
The vote is scheduled for May 16th.
May 16th. So it's coming up here.
Yep.
It's after the draft lottery.
Yeah.
So I mean, as far as coaching goes, I think that what will happen, going back to our conversation and getting away from Jake and Chaika and all these other guys, I think it will be an internal candidate. I think the Flames are looking for new blood, and I think that's, you dance with the devil rather than the devil you don't, and I think it will. I honestly think it's going to be Huska. I'm not sure Mitch Love is ready for that yet, as much as the fans want it. I don't know that that's what the organization wants to do. I think they want to keep Mitch in the AHL for now.
I didn't realize he was so young. That's on me. Like, he's 38. He's only done 2 years in the AHL.
Yeah.
I think rushing him up may be. I don't think you'd lose him if you don't give him the position.
Not yet. No. And let's just say if it's internal, I think it's Huska.
If it's internal, it's Huska, but
I think if it's Conroy, it's Huska, because I think, again, he's the known candidate. I mean, Connie doesn't have his own coach, right? So I think he'd go with the guy he knows.
Yeah. I'm gonna go under the radar though, and I'm gonna put the dark horse in that Ryan McGill is going to get some consideration.
I thought you were gonna say Jelena.
Well,
everybody wants Jerome. Why not Jelena? He's already a coach.
He was there. He's done. They've been there, done that with him though. He's been on the bench. I think it's if they're talking about wanting someone young, like younger, and come up through the ranks as with more of that new school approach. I don't. The more I think about it, I think if it's internal, they're going to take a big swing for the fences and go with Mitch Love. But if it's not that, I think they go external. I think Kevin's onto something with McGill.
And also, I'm going to throw one other name. And then we can move on. Dave Lowry. I wonder, I don't know if he becomes a head coach in this organization, but he does have some experience in this organization. And I do believe, of course, Conroy knows him, and Pascal knows him. He coached a little bit in Winnipeg. He's been an assistant coach. That could be a guy, if you go Mitch Love, that could be a guy that could replace him with the Wranglers as well.
If you want to talk about a Wranglers replacement, I have a suggestion there as well. He's older, but a guy who's had some good junior success and lives in Calgary, Tim Hunter.
Yeah.
162. I don't think he's a long-term coach, but I think, he lives in Calgary. He's wanted to stay close to home. He was a good WHL coach. I'd give him a serious consideration. I don't think he's an NHL coach, but I think he's one of these guys that's probably a good dev coach. And I think, might be good at the HL level for that reason.
I think if you want someone with some
ties to the organization. Tim was an assistant in the NHL from 97 through 2013. So he's been around for a long time. He was a head coach for Moose Jaw from 14 through 20. So, this is a guy who, has some coaching experience at both levels.
Yeah. The more I think, I think that would be a good sort of AHL.
I agree. I think if you're bringing Love up, I think he's kind of your next heir apparent to Love. I don't think he's an NHL guy, but I think if, like Kevin was talking about, an AHL replacement, I think Tim is a good AHL replacement.
Although I think, going even internally with someone in, going to the WHL and promoting there, I think.
Or even if you said Tim's your head coach and Stajan's your associate in the AHL or something like that.
Yeah.
Or bringing up the hitman coach and making Stage your head. I don't know. There's lots of things they could do there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you got to be careful because the Wranglers are having success. I think you want to make sure, again, you've got a guy they can continue to have success with.
Yeah. My other thing with the Flames next year for training camp, whoever the coach is, there has to be some competition. We have to make sure that there's legitimate competition.
Well, and I think those are the kind of questions you're asking during the interview process.
Yeah. We've had this debate, but I think Dustin Wolf has to be in the conversation for a job in the National Hockey League.
Yeah. He has to have a path to becoming the backup at the very least next year.
I don't think he has to be on the opening day roster, but there has to be that possibility in that path.
If you're saying no, you're staying in the AHL again after two absolutely ridiculous seasons, I think that's going to be a tough sell for him, and you might end up souring the relationship, and that's something you don't want to do. He may not ask for the trade right away, but it may just be the start of something you don't want to start.
Or even if he doesn't ask for a trade, he's still on entry level. Maybe just doesn't re-sign. He pulls an Adam Fox and I don't want to be in Calgary.
Yep.
Yeah. But even, unfortunately, I don't think we'll see Matthew Phillips in this organization. Well, maybe. I don't know. Maybe Craig Conroy can.
I don't think so. I think I saw Ryan Pike talk about him saying that he doesn't think he's an NHLer. I agree. But I don't think he's been given the fair shake to prove anyone who thinks that way wrong.
And I think the interesting thing with Phillips, and we talked about this on Fireside Chat, Phillips is a Calgary boy. I think the Flames would happily extend him an AHL deal if he wanted to stay and play at home in the AHL. If he kind of realizes, hey, I top out the A, I'd rather stay home, play for the hometown crowd. I think the Flames would happily keep him around. And I don't think that Darryl's son will be back next year if Darryl's not back. So maybe he becomes your captain. But I think if he thinks he can make the NHL, I think someone will bring him in at camp or sign him to a deal. And, again, sort of like we talked about coaching in Arizona, maybe you go take a job there on their fourth line, just saying, hey, it's an NHL job. Let's see if I can do it. I think someone would swing for him if he wants him.
See, I just think that the one thing that the Flames have to the one area the Flames are really weak is just the play of the fourth line. The law firm, as we affectionately called it. I think you have to get faster on your fourth line. And
Sure, but I think Lucic is out. Dewar just got re-signed, so I think right there you're faster on your fourth line. Whether
Are you bringing
bring up
Trevor Lewis back?
I think Trevor Lewis at league minimum is a good addition, even as a number 13 forward. He's good in the room.
Thing with
He's a
Nick
veteran
Phillips
player.
is he's a Group 6 UFA. I don't think he'll hit what is needed to become for the Flames to keep him as an RFA. So he has the opportunity to go out and see who else is willing to offer him a contract. And yeah, I agree with Dan. If it goes out there and sees that no one's willing to give him that option or give him a path to the NHL, I think he'll come back and play for the Wranglers.
I think it would be, if it's Wranglers or Europe, I think it's Wranglers.
I could see that. Also, I could see maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. I still think there's a small possibility of NHL for him.
I definitely think there's a possibility of NHL. I just don't think in a Flames jersey.
I think I think there will be some team that will give him a 1-year deal, but give him a legit opportunity to make the team. Like it could be a Columbus, it could be a Arizona, it could be an Anaheim.
There's lots of teams that need filler, and I think he's a great filler guy on 1 year. Yeah. And I think he's the kind of guy, I hate to say it, he's the kind of guy they'll kick around the league till he makes $1 million, and then he'll have to find something else if he doesn't take that next step.
Yeah.
And Kevin, I think like within the organization, and maybe not your top guys like Zari fill in that fourth line role, but I think there's a lot of guys in the farm that could fill that fourth line role and get faster if they want to go that way. Or I think there's enough free agents as well that you could sign for less than $1 million to go that way if you wanted a more veteran fourth line. I think it depends which way they want to go with that. But even when I look at if I kind of look at guys who I think might fill that fourth line role and maybe top out at the fourth line, I think they're still high on Cole Schwindt. I think Ben Jones could fill that. I think, maybe they want to bring Rooney back up. Not what I would do, but, he's down there. Martin Pospisil could fill that. There's all sorts of guys on the Heat, or sorry, not the Heat, the Wranglers. I still always call them by the wrong name, on the Wranglers, who I think, we weren't expecting Walker Dewar to be anything either. So I think there's enough guys that you might try in that fourth line spot to see what you got internally. Dryden
Adam
Hunt, who they just brought in,
good and down with the Wranglers as well. He's someone maybe not next year, but like going forwards to watch for a fourth line role.
And if you look at some of the sort of veteran guys they brought in, like Clark Bishop, Alex Gallant, I could see a guy like that making that fourth line spot if they want more veteran.
Yeah. No. I think they just need to get younger and faster than what they were last year.
And I think the big difference,
as Dan said, Lucic is gone.
Yeah.
Nick Ritchie will be gone.
I think
might bring back Lewis, but I don't think they will be. I think they just move on and get younger.
I think the big difference here, and Sean and Kev, tell me what you think. I think in the past, the Flames have resorted to, if there's a hole, fill with a vet. And I think the new GM will probably be tasked with, if there's a hole, try to fill internally.
I think that's what Treliving was trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And, even if we want to talk about interesting guys who might be gone, my worry is what happened with Michael Stone. If you've got Hannafin, Anderson, Zadorov, Weegar, Stetcher, Shillington, you really don't have a lot of room for Stone if you think Shillington's coming back. I think they'll go with I could see, honestly, Michael Stone signing a two-way deal or even starting the season as the veteran on the Wranglers team. And, I mean, we know that Tanev, who's in there as well, is never healthy. I think you sign Stone, put him on the Wranglers, and say, hey, when Tanny goes down, which we know is going to happen. To me, it's not if, it's when. You're the call-up.
Yeah, because there's no one down there that is banging at the door to get up yet. Poirier is close, but again, he's only 20. He's someone I think you need to marinate in the AHL more.
And I think if you're looking for a veteran leader, you could put Stone down there and stick a C on him.
Yeah. I don't think Solovyov's done enough.
Yeah, I don't think Poolman is going to amount to much. Like you said, there's not a lot of DeSimone, Gilbert. I don't think those guys are going to stick around, or if they do, I think they're more platoon guys.
Signed for another year. Gilbert,
He's
And
an
we-
Abbotsford
Also
guy,
signed
or
for another
a
year.
Calgary guy.
And we
Wranglers guy.
heard Stone say in his exit interviews he doesn't want to be anywhere but Calgary. Like he doesn't want to go pursue another job. He likes city, family's here. So I think he takes whatever the nice man offers him. And it's, hey, take the two-way, play down there. You're our first call up, because we know that he's going to be consistent when we bring him up.
Yeah.
I mean, he was on a two-way this season.
Yeah, and I think that he stayed up here more than he should have because we were missing Shillington. I think if Shillington was healthy, I don't think we would have seen nearly as much Stone as we did, and I think we would have seen him on Wranglers ice as well.
And then because his contract for this year was a $750 cap hit at the NHL level, but when he was down in the minors, he was making $400. He would be making $400. So, and I think that would be another. He'll probably just sign this deal again.
I agree.
And with that minor salary, there be very little. There wouldn't be many teams that be willing to claim him on waivers when he goes on it.
Well, and I think sort of, if they know that he wants to be in Calgary too, I don't know that you would. Sort of a gentleman's agreement thing of, hey, this guy wants to stay in Calgary. Everyone's got a Michael Stone or can find one on, free agency. I think if you know the guy wants to be here, you don't take him, and then he's going to be miserable because he's in Buffalo away from his family.
Well, you could just pull he's 32, so you could definitely pull like a Spezza, and I know it's not the same, but instead just say, look, I want to be here in Calgary. And he won't even entertain any offers.
And that's the kind of guy who I think, honestly, will be in the organization for a long time. He's the kind of guy who retires, I think maybe becomes an assistant coach, and I think, or maybe he's the next, maybe he retires and he becomes the next assistant general manager. Like, I think he will be around for a while here.
Yeah, and he could, depending on what the Flames do with the blue line, maybe not next year if he still wants to play, but I could see him being the veteran, like the captain, if Brett Sutter moves on.
Do you think there's any way that Darryl's kid stays on the team at this point?
I mean, he's old enough, and I don't think he's. I think his contract's up anyways, so probably not.
I really think that was done as a favor to Darryl. And I think if we moved on from Darryl, we move on from his kid.
Yeah, and if they let's say they win the championship this year.
I think if they win the championship, that's a good way for him to just ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
And probably retire from pro hockey, or at least North American pro hockey.
Yeah.
I remember I was thinking about this. When I played hockey, we had a guy, he was the dad of one of the kids. He took the coaching role because nobody wanted it. He kind of left because he was pissed off, and then he came to games and just made fun of us. And I can see Darryl doing that, watching the game with his kid there, making fun of everybody because he's not coaching. Like, I don't know, you'd want that bad juju around the dome.
Do we see Darryl coaching again?
No. Darryl was retired, and he said when he came back to Calgary because of unfinished business. I don't think you ever see him coach at the pro level again.
He'll be quite happy doing what he does with the Rebels.
Yeah, I think he'll work with the family team, whether he's coaching or he's GMing or he's scouting. I think Darryl's a guy like all the Sutters. They're all around the NHL. I could see him being a scout for somebody. Before he came to Calgary, he was a coaching consultant, so like you guys were saying with the Sedins in Anaheim. I think he'll always be around the game, but I can't see him behind the bench. He's also 64. I don't know how long you want to be doing this for.
That's fair.
The biggest question is, will Chris Sutter keep dancing? Have we lost Chris Sutter time? Because let's be honest. I'm not trying to be silly. That's become a big part of their game presentation.
It has, yeah.
And it's become something that they do every game and fans get used to. So it's, how often has a coach's son got that involved? And I think, that's become a big part of their presentation since Darryl came back.
It is an interesting question for sure.
I think that if Chris wanted to, and I don't know if Chris lives by himself or he lives with mom and dad or he'd go back to the farm, but if Chris wanted to do it, I think the fans would still embrace Chris. I don't think anyone would look at him as Darryl's son. I think he's almost like the secondary mascot.
Yeah. Fair enough. In terms of the coaching of Flames, anything else we need to dive into?
Not as far as the Flames go, I don't think.
No.
I think all this will be the only thing I'll say is I think this whole thing gets wrapped up by the end of May. I think they're going to have a GM in place fairly quickly so they can move towards the draft. I think that guy will know who he wants as coach very quickly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be so. I agree with you. I think within the next couple of weeks we're going to know what's going
sure
on here pretty quickly here. The other thing I guess that I wanted to touch on here that's pretty significant news is out of the BCHL. The BCHL has opted out of Hockey Canada, citing that they just find this relationship untenable in terms of wanting to recruit players from outside of really Western Canada, quite frankly. The limitations put on that. Hockey Canada doesn't seem too upset about this. Now, the Penticton Bees never really participated in that level's junior champion. I usually say the Penticton Bees or the BCHL champion, which has typically been the Penticton Bees, which has been the best organization, hasn't been participating in the national championships in some while. So I don't know if this is a huge surprise ultimately, but I do think that this is an issue that another issue in terms of where Hockey Canada is at, that there still needs to be some significant new ideas coming from this, from Hockey Canada to catch up to where the modernization of this game is. Because the BCHL does a fantastic job in terms of their recruitment. They're able to get players into college. That's been one of the big advantages for the BCHL. And that league is considered a more superior league than some of the other leagues around, some of the other junior hockey leagues around in that level. So for me, Hockey Canada may go meh, but I think this is an issue, again, that Hockey Canada just looks like an outdated organization at this particular point that needs to make some changes.
I mean, they are, but I don't think that BCHL leaving adds to it at all. I think the BCHL was just looking again just to get out from underneath it and expand and be able to just market themselves better, and get out from underneath the whole Hockey Canada umbrella. I don't think it actually. I think this was going to happen regardless of what has happened with the Hockey Canada over the past year and a bit.
Nobody's really been able to tell me. I mean, besides, the championships having to find their own officials and their own insurance, what's going to change?
I think, well, what's going to change?
Like Kevin said, Penticton wasn't going to the Nationals anyways.
No, but I think I think they can recruit easier now.
They can, yeah.
From across Canada, because they were doing a good job recruiting players who were NCAA bound from the States. But it's going to be easier for them to do that for players, say, based out of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba.
You could only, under Hockey Canada, you could only recruit as far west as Manitoba. And they want to recruit nationally.
I anticipated somebody would leave Hockey Canada. I just didn't know which league. And I wouldn't be surprised if more leagues leave or something new is built sort of, in Hockey Canada's shadow. I think this story is not over yet.
I could see more like in the AJ, because I'm thinking, like, is there the BCHL always has been the league that's gotten the most press in terms of that level.
Yeah, it's kind of the top junior A league.
Yeah, and now that as Kevin said, now they can fully recruit across Canada as well as down in the States and everything. So I think that's the biggest reason why, as opposed to anything else. And I get the Hockey Canada regional regional restrictions on recruitment, because you want to be able to keep the kids closer to home. I think I understand that idea, but from the BCHL's perspective, I understand why they're doing this as well.
And our system here in Canada is long and old and entrenched, and I wonder if this might even cause all the junior A leagues to look at doing things differently and maybe changing recruiting for everybody, or just taking another look at a very entrenched system.
Like, we're talking junior age, where it's like a lot of the junior A is anywhere between 16 and 19. Like there's kids that are still in high school,
and
which
I think
is.
And I think a lot of that has changed too since the CHL came in. I mean, Junior A used to kind of be the big thing now. Like Sean said, a lot of these guys are destined for the NCAA. I could see the whole Canadian Junior League almost acting more as a feeder for the NCAA and looking at this a chance to maybe change eligibility rules across the country. And if not Hockey Canada, maybe a new Canadian Junior Hockey Federation or something.
Well, I think a lot of that too is that maybe – I'm not sure if the NCAA will play ball, but what might happen with this is the CHL trying to figure out how they can have players like that can start in the CHL and go to the NCAA, or because we already see NCAA's come back to that.
For sure. And I think with Hockey Canada having to go through the changes, I think we all know they're going to. Now's the time to have these discussions, to get out of the entrenched, this is the way we've always done it, which is how Hockey Canada tends to operate. So I don't really see one way or the other. I don't think this is going to affect their league. I think, and we'll try it. And there's nothing to say they can't come back to Hockey Canada. I think it's a good press thing to get away from Hockey Canada right now. And if they get their crap figured out, maybe there's a grand reuniting in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, could definitely see that. It's just, like I said, I think this was going to happen regardless of what Hockey Canada's gone through here.
Yeah, I didn't know if it'd be the BCHL, but I assumed one of the big leagues would make them.
If anyone was going to do it, it was going to be the BCHL. I don't think any of the other junior leagues like AJ or SJ or OJ.
If we had a program like the US does, sort of a national U18 team, I could see that one of parting ways, but we don't. Because again, I don't know that anyone wants that Hockey Canada stink right now.
No.
And Sean, we talked earlier about Tree, and I'll just go back to this quickly. We'll talk about Hockey Canada. I could see Tree being the guy brought into Hockey Canada sort of as this new face. His dad's done some stuff there. I could see Tree saying, hey, I'm not going to go to the NHL. I'll become the GM or operations manager of Hockey Canada in its new position.
Yeah, because who is running that right now? Because
he's run his own league in the past. His dad's been involved in Hockey Canada. I think Canadians would buy into sort of the Tree Livings running Hockey Canada or being big proponents there.
Yeah, because they just got a whole new board. Tom Rennie's still running it, I guess. But I could see them as soon as they have someone in place, like getting someone like Tree Living, and then replacing Rennie, because that just they're I think what's best for Hockey Canada is a full clean slate.
I agree. And
fresh eyes.
Tree has a place in the shoe swap. I think is around Kelowna actually. So if Hockey Canada's based out of Calgary, easy commute. Like I think there's a lot of reasons it could work.
Yeah. So.
And I think he's well respected enough. There's other guys that I don't know if they are, but I think he's well respected enough that you could look at him to turn that around, and people would listen to him.
Yeah, sure. You're talking about Jerome?
No, I was just saying we're talking about Hockey Canada, and I said I could see Tree being the guy brought into Hockey Canada as sort of the new face of a new Hockey Canada. I could see Tree Living sort of being let's call him the executive director, the president of hockey operations of Hockey Canada, and say we're moving in a different direction. His dad's been part of Hockey Canada. Tree's run his own leagues. I could see him being that trustworthy face for Hockey Canada 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. I also would love to see Jennifer Botterill get some sort of role in that organization as well. I just think her mindset about hockey kind of fits.
I think a new Hockey Canada will go for a more diverse group. So I could see her being, let's say, the AGM, in NHL terms.
Yeah.
Or head of women's hockey, which is very important to Hockey Canada. I can almost see them having, two, it's almost like Law and Order, two separate yet equally important groups, Tree running men and Botterill running women.
I believe Cassie Campbell is actually in that sort of on the board and will be heading up the head of women's hockey as the head of women's hockey. I
think she might be, but I think then she'll have to pick if she wants to be that or a broadcaster. And I don't know which way she'd go. I think she's there now as a sort of a goodwill thing, but we'll see.
I think Kevin Bieksa should also, I would love Kevin. To be fair, Kevin Bieksa would be a good add to Hockey Canada as well.
If we want to talk about good ads, a guy nobody knows except in the Calgary market, I think Rob Kerr would be good there.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually.
But we can talk about Hockey Canada on another show.
Yes.
Yes, I think we're eclipsing 2 hours, which is way past Tyler's bedtime, and even he's not on the show.
Past my bedtime.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, you guys, you Albertan times there. But we'll leave it there. We'll catch up next week. Should be interesting to see where we're at in the second round. Should be interesting to see if other moves that are going on.
Well, the draft lottery is on Monday as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that will be. Well, from a Vancouver perspective, that's gonna be absolutely fascinating to see how this market reacts to wherever they end up. But
I think it's exciting from both teams. I think Vancouver and Calgary. I mean, it's the lowest pick Calgary's had in a while, and
is Calgary in the lottery though?
I believe they are. Every team that's not in the playoffs is in the lottery, are they not?
They can't get a top. They can't get the top pick.
No, I think the lowest thing goes like 12 or 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, I think, and we've seen, I know Tree's not here, but we've seen the Flames parlay picks and the things in the past. I think that pick, whether it's made or as currency, is going to be fascinating for the Flames as well.
Yeah. But it's going to be, it's absolutely fascinating to see. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. I think this is the most anticipated lottery since Connor McDavid for sure. Absolutely fascinating. By the way, the Winnipeg Ice, congratulations to them. They have advanced to the WHL finals. They'll face the winner of the Thunderbirds and the Blazers. And there's some really damn good players on that Winnipeg Ice team to watch. So we'll leave it there, though. How do we follow you?
I am Bearder Canucks 03 on Twitter, and go Abbotsford Canucks.
Dan.
We are Fireside Chat. You can find us wherever fine podcasts are found. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or firesidechat.ca. And boo Abbotsford, go Wranglers.
You follow Tyler, TNOBLE, Devin, Gordhouse09, Chris Schneid's, SCHNEIDZ, and I am KEVOLE. Shifts and Pucks, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Subscribe wherever you get your audio, as well as on the Area 51 Sports Network. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you very soon. Bye for now.